Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to dedicate this talk to my mom and dad, Walter and Ann Fuschlin. I talk about Valley Livestock Transport, serving cattle and sheepmen for a reign of 60 years within 11 western states, and domiciled out of here in Dixon, California. What's livestock transport? What's that? Oh, it's not on. Can you hear me? No. Okay, closer. Here we go. Now Dave can hear me. All right. Okay, we're on. Let's see. So, what's livestock transportation all about? Well, when the cattle or sheep are out of feed, they need a new ride to feeding areas. And yesteryear, way a long time ago, they were driven from maybe summer pasture to winter pasture, up into the Sierras, back and forth, so on. And then trucks started to come about in probably the 1920s or so. They were pretty crude then, but livestock started to ship by truck, and long distance livestock had been shipped by rail, as you've seen in many of the cowboy movies, you know, the drives into the Kansas City stockyards and so on. So anyway, move livestock to a new feeding area until it's their last ride, or to a point of sale, or it may be a situation where they're in peril, got a flood, you know, fire or storm situation. What types of rigs did this kind of work? Over the years, there have been a lot of changes. Today's trucks are probably nearly twice as productive as they were in yesteryear. So let's take a look at this one right here. This was probably belonged to Roy Gill at the time. Roy Gill dairy out here, that was Grandpa Gill, as compared to the current Roy Gill that lives here in town. It was an old Diamond T, 1938 model. And then this was West Coast International truck and trailer rig that was purchased in 1946, just after the war. And this was a third one, is a Kenworth cabover called the Round Nose, which really never went into production because it was designed during the war, and Valley Livestock happened to get enough pieces to put it together in their local shop here in Dixon to provide another truck. Things were hard to come by then. You're glad to be able to get just pieces and parts to put a truck together. So besides trucking, truck and trailer had an advantage of being able to negotiate curves, sharp curves, go out, climb mountainous terrains with the dual drive axles, and they were able to break up the trailer from the truck and bobtail into a ranch or something, bobtail out, transfer livestock onto the trailer, then go on to a destination. As compared to a current semi rig that's Midwestern style, you wouldn't able to do that. So yes, now up here, okay, all right. You just need to move close. You need to move. Well, don't make me do it again. Move up here, Dave. So, yeah, thanks for reminding me. Anyway, so then what about the drivers? Well, to operate a rig like this, you really had to have a lot of moxie. There was no power steering. You ran into places where you wouldn't want to take your pickup truck. The roads were bad, ice and snow. Up into the coastal mountains over there where front wheels almost come off the ground because the road is so steep. If you stall out, you're never going to get going without twisting an axle or drive line, so you better not miss that shift climbing at 15% grade. And besides that, you had to be an animal handler. You got these critters, you're at the ranch. Well, we're going to put out 150 today. How many you want? Well, give me so-and-so in such and such a compartment. You load them and count them in as they go on because you're responsible for the numbers when you deliver. So turn the page, Dave. I want to take you on a tour of yesteryear. Let's go back. I'm going to take you, let's just walk up and down First Street and see what we can see that used to be way long time ago. So let's go to the Cattleman's Restaurant up north here and look across the freeway, and you see a concrete silo there. and an old barn or two. It was a dairy barn. That was the Roy Gill, Grandpa Roy Gill Ranch, and they had a going concern. They were into dairy. They were into cattle. They're into trucking. They're into crops, and they even had a Diamond T truck dealership in San Francisco, along with an association, probably with a creamery there. So they had a lot of irons in the fire. So let's go to 1927. Starts out with my dad in Switzerland. He was 17 years old. He decided to come out here with his cousin and enjoy what opportunity that he could dig up. So he had Frank Dentling was his uncle. He lived west A Street out here in the country, a couple miles. He got on a train, couldn't speak English in New York, and come across and said he ate pie and coffee and pie all the way through. That's the only English words he knew. So landed at Uncle Frank's ranch and decided, well, we got to have a job. So I guess Gill was the place to go with. I mean, you could go over there and milk cows. So he became a cow milker and started to work his way up at Gill Ranch. And say you're doing so many different things. But I got to tell you a story what happened out there in that silo. There's that silo, he had to stomp the silage. Silage trucks would come in and drop all that stuff down. And then there would be a couple of men in there and stomp the silage down, pack it, and then pretty soon another truck would come. Well, my dad was a little, he was short and powerful. And then there was a tall, lanky Texan there, and they both kind of talked funny. Everybody figured they talked kind of funny, and I think they found out they didn't like each other too well either. So somebody was an instigator who put them both inside that silo to stomp silage that day. So they went in there and stomped the silage down. Pretty soon that was taken care of, and we're waiting for the next truck to come in and one of them to say something, and then boom, bang, here they're going at it. And this went on sequence for about 2 or 3 times. So finally their job was done, and they walked out of there friends. So that's the silage story. Anyway, time went on. My dad was working his way up. Eventually he became a truck boss after he was there 10, 11 years or so. And during his time off, he would wander over to Sacramento area, and there's a young lady over there who grew up in a dairy, a Swiss lady. She came here when she was 5 years old with her family and joined in on a dairy. And she couldn't wait to get out of the dairy and get on with Sacramento, and went to Hills College and landed a job at Crystal Creamery. Well, my dad started to get sweet on her. I don't know, maybe he had something in mind. I don't know. So he had a bookkeeper, automatic bookkeeper. So, and then Gill, you got to surmise what was happening. Gill had gone through the Depression. Times, I'm sure, were tough. He probably wanted to get out of some of the activities or business, sideline business that occurred, especially those damn trucks and maybe that Diamond T truck dealership. So he says, I'm sure he came up one day and said, well, you ought to take these damn trucks and run them on yourself, these 6 livestock trucks I got. So the next thing happened, my mom and dad were married. They went down to the First National Bank, they call it, instead of the First Northern Bank, and got the transfer of ownership and started making payments on those trucks. I remember my mom saying, oh my gosh, they saved all this money while I was working, and poof, 3 months' time, it's all gone. The cash is gone. And things weren't too good. They were running out of money. They had wrecked one truck, then they had to take the best one and sell it for cash to keep on going. So you can imagine they had probably 3 trucks that looked like this one, and 3 of them a little older. They're called Morelands. Were made down in West Coast style truck made in Los Angeles. So I got to turn the page. Hold on, Dave. All right. 1950s came around. Oh no, I got to back up a little bit. I got to back up a little bit here. I'm getting ahead of myself. We got the Gill silo deal, and you know the story. So let's go on the tour. I didn't want to rush it. So we come back across the freeway, and we look over to the left, and we got a livestock auction, sale barn for the people in the area with their stock. Then let's walk a little further south again, and on the left you got the Vassar Vassar Sheep Ranch, a purebred sheep ranch. You don't see that there anymore. And then we walk further on south, and we come to a large vacant lot on our left, and we look across from the CVS complex, and we see this large empty lot, and that was Armour Foods, or the Armour Slaughter Plant, previously Mace Meat Company. And behind that, you go straight east to the railroad tracks, stop at the railroad tracks there, was a set of railroad corrals. And I remember with my dad, probably about 8 years old, he brought a load of sheep into the railroad corrals. We unloaded, and they were reloading onto a rail car to send livestock east. Long distance livestock was handled by the rail at that time, so I was about 8 years old. So the thing I remember is I looked down the way there alongside the tracks, and there's people grouped together, and the fire was burning. And I walked down there and talked to the hobos. They were cooking beans and weenies, I swear. I don't know. That's how I kind of remember it, like in a comic strip, you know. So anyway, let's go. So now we're past Armour. We ought to go down to Dawson's on our right. Dawson's Bar and Grill. That's a famous place where a lot of people and business people in town, especially livestock people, frequently, often, and made verbal handshake deals, buy and sell, provide this service or that, and also find out something in Dixon, just generally what happened the day before. Not the same anymore. So now we're finished with Dawson's. Let's turn left. Turn left, and we're going to go out to the community church, which is Doyle Lane. And turn left on Doyle Lane, followed out to the end, and there's an old dairy, really old dairy, probably like the Gill Dairy. That was a Tim dairy out there. Still, you can see resin parts of it. And on the other side is a Tim sheep feedlot. Not too long ago, they were still feeding lambs. Let's go back into town and hit Dawson's, and we'll go straight south on First Street, heading south and out of town. On the left is Stoven Brothers Slaughter Plant. And it's currently was sold out and bought by Superior Farms. Superior Farms currently runs it, and they're the only major sheep plant on the West Coast. Superior Farms. We're lucky to have them here in town. So then let's make a circle now. We're going to circle back around to Midway and get along to the railroad track. Get up on alongside the railroad track and drive back into town. That's the old Highway 40. Now it's Porter Road, but it's the old Highway 40. Just as we come into town, there's a big shop building on the left, and that was called City Garage back in probably the 20s. And before that, it was the highway, Willie knows it, highway, Dixon Highway or something like that. Dixon Garage. Then it was bought by Norman Duvor, and he called it City Garage. I've got one of his bill of ladings here, or invoices. It was a Dodge dealer. There was a small repair cars, gas station out in front, and they had gravity flow pumps there and so on. That's a property my folks started out in after spending 6 months in Broderick, South Sacramento with all the trucks. So they lived in upstairs above that shop room for a while, and then the following year they rented out the restaurant that was part of the property. It was actually the little white house was a restaurant, and that's where my mom and dad and Lorraine and I, my sister and I, were raised. So that's the end of the tour. So, did you catch it all, Dave? Okay. What's that? Any question? Right here, yeah. This is the outline part is what the size was before. Then it's tripped. The size is actually tripled. We're building out more repair shop area and storage and so on. So office, restaurant right here. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was right there, and it's a good thing it doesn't talk. Bachelor part, really said. All right, I got to turn the page again now. Well, see, the 50s, World War II was over. Population Dixon was 1,200, and Marvin Way was one of the first streets to go in. Here's A Street. Here's Marvin Way. It's one of the first streets to go in after World War II Dixon expansion. Only about 1,200 population at that 1,200. So things are happening all around California. Growth, expansion, baby boomers are being born. 1953, my dad conceived the basket or belly trailer. He had an idea from a utility trailer company. They produced a aluminum freight van that looked like something like this. He took one look at that. It was the first time somebody would produce a frameless trailer. He looked under there and says, wow, look at all that room. We could put 50 lambs in this area right in here, or 30 calves. And he went to bat with the salesperson. They figured out a bunch of specs and built the first 2 baskets that were produced in 1954. From then on, they purchased 2 more every year, along with trucks that look something like this. You notice that up on top here I've outlined another, looks like basket up in the air. They call this the penthouse. Truck dispatchers started naming that thing the penthouse. It was an effort to accelerate expansion of the fleet by adding a portion up here to ship some more lambs. People a lot of times like the extra room. They'd order a basket and then say, hey, by the way, give me a penthouse. I got some light animals I like to put up there. Eventually, trucks became full height, like here, all the way through, made all out of aluminum, and that's probably the maximum capacity that the industry ended up with out here in front. Inside here, you can see the compartments, or the cattle was double-decked here, and also those cattle decks were split in half for sheep, so you actually had four decks in between of animals. As aluminum planks removed or put back in to change from one commodity to the other. Okay, Dave? All right.
You're doing fine, Rick. Just keep going. Remember what I told you.
All right, okay. Talk a little bit about trucks again. Let's see, conventional cab where the hood is out in front. This is a cab over where the actual cab was over the top of the engine. COE, or cab over engine, was called. It provided about 5 more feet of loading space. Then this is a later model truck here, of course, and it was a flat nose situation. The length of the cab was the same, but inside here was a sleeper compartment, about 2 feet wide. So now you had a sleeper cab without forfeiting any loading space. So you could drive somewhere, take a nap, and then finish out the next morning or whatever was necessary. Okay, let's see. Next one, that's an interesting one, a big one. 1962. I was down at Cal Poly for a couple of years, and I got word, hey, Valley Livestock has a strike, union strike going on. The drivers are striking. So I went home to find out what's going on. Pretty rough deal. There was picket line running all along here. My sister had to be taken to school with the sheriff. There were a lot of gravel rash happening. Drivers got beat up. My parents decided not to give in to the Teamsters, but to continue operating. They hired new drivers. They willingly had a lot of new people came in who could do the job. So the Teamsters were really, that was Hoffa days, really rough and tough to do business with. Probably would not win a strike, but they decided talking to an attorney, they could do it legally. And what they did is negotiating a new contract with another competing union against the Teamsters. So they wrote a contract and got all the details straight. And the big part of the contract is the folks did not want the Teamsters having control of the pension fund. They had all the other goodies, health and welfare, vacation, and so on, but they did not want to have the union control the pension fund. A lot of money went into that. And there was rumors the Teamsters were squandering and had Las Vegas investments and so on. So what they did in lieu of the pension plan, they made up a savings program where a percentage of the driver's pay would go into a bank account in the driver's name. So you think about this, that was the beginning of the conception of IRA. It wasn't tax deductible then, well, that was the IRA, Individual Retirement Account. In the end, so there'd have to be a vote of which union the drivers wanted to go with. So the old drivers versus the new drivers, everybody pitched in a vote, and then ended up going with the new union. Teamsters had to walk off with their tail between their legs. That's kind of unheard of in those days. So anyway, pretty good part of history. 1968 rolls along about 6 years later. This is, I call it the Great Expansion. James Allen and Sons in San Francisco slaughter plant, processed cattle and sheep, local cattle and sheep. And all of a sudden, they found their competitors downtown were getting dressed beef at a cut rate because the rail had cut the rate on freight from the Midwest for dressed beef. They were furious. They called up the rail. Well, you cut the rate on dressed beef for my competitors. You got to cut the rate for live lamb coming here from the same position. Didn't work out with Union Railroad between Allen's and Sons. So Douglas Allen, the president, called up Dad and says, hey, you want to do all my long distance sheep hauling from now on? Wow. Ooh, that's a big move. Takes a lot of equipment. I guess Mom and Dad talked about it, called them back down, we're going to do it. And so decided to order 8 new style truck and trailer Merit bodies and Freightliner power units, something like this, in order to meet the demand. The auditor told my mom, don't do it. You're going too far in debt. She says, I got it figured out. We can make it. So they ordered the first 8 trucks, and they were the first trucks with air conditioning. And that didn't work out worth the doggone. The drivers loved it, but the things would lose Freon. And Norman Delgard and my dad used to have fights over that. Can't you fix that damn truck? Every time it comes in here, the driver says, my air conditioner won't work, And finally, they was looking for bubbles, spraying this and that. Finally, Norman says, the only way to find the leaks in that take the damn truck, the whole truck, and stick it in the irrigation ditch and watch for the bubbles, he said. And kind of way he was right, because what had happened, they finally put orange dye with the Freon. All of a sudden, all the hoses turned orange. And the factory had put the wrong hoses in. The stuff was leaking out by osmosis, just as slow as creep. That was probably the early days of ACE air conditioners in heavy trucks. 1970, I had been working for FMC Corporation for 5 years in San Jose, and Ordnance Division there on military tracked amphibious vehicles. My parents came down to make a visit. So he said, you coming home or not? Whoa. I was getting pretty comfortable there. Big decision. I could go off in this fork of life, or I could come back and continue with what my parents built, and that with all the support, all the customers they had at the time. I came home. I married Nancy in 1974. 4 years later, Dad passed, and at that time I became Mom's general manager. And then there was an oil embargo. Some of you remember that. We had to worry about continuing trucks with livestock on board without stopping. So truck stops are only given 30, 40 gallons of diesel. So we doubled the fuel capacity in our trucks, put extra tanks. And the underground tank at home, we doubled the capacity there. So when we came home, we could at least get a drink in between fill-ups. That's a significant thing that happened in this country. Then we go to 1982. Montford bought Armour. Armour was a going concern then. They really were an efficient outfit. Reason Montford wanted to buy out Armour. Same time, Stoughton wanted to get out of the business, to retire, and Superior Farms bought Stoughton plant. That was probably the peak of our business. We ran 23 livestock trucks. You can see there, almost all of them are home there, probably during Christmas or Thanksgiving. 100,000 miles a year average each one. Many times they were running a team, Idaho and back. Probably had about 50 employees at that time, 2 dispatchers, a bookkeeper, answering service clerk, office manager, 6 mechanics with working 2 8-hour shifts, 3 clean out people, and about 33 drivers. And at the same time, just before Easter, there was probably 4,500 lamb killed here in Dixon, and some of the dressed lamb was sent as far east as New York. So now you know where Lambtown, USA came from. Another page, Dave. Oh no, those are refrigerated trucks. So that was another operation, another old story for somebody. 1988. Let's see here. Let me get this straight here. All right, thank you. 1988. Good. You hear me? No. Hello. Okay, now we got it. Better, huh? Okay, I got to really swallow the mic here. All right, 1988. Having bought Armour, Montford closed it down. It was probably intentional. What they had done, Armour was killing beef and lamb both, and Montford was interested in lamb only, and they just ditched the cattle part of it, and they were not competitive all without doing both products. So they closed it and opened a plant in Denver, which is their plan all the time, I'm sure, to get rid of Western competition. And along with them, a lot of slaughter plants all over the cities and country were closing up and leaving California because of regulations and difficulty doing business. And along with them went feedlots. So what was left was a cow-calf operation or a sheep or lamb business, which had been on a sliding scale for years. 1992 rolled around about 4 years later, and oh my gosh, truck drivers. Can't find any truck drivers. You have to put an ad in the paper. Before we had walk-ins, didn't have any trouble finding men. That got to be pretty serious. I remember talking to my competitors who walked by and crowd around each other and said, "Gee, Christmas, I can't find any good drivers." And the other competitor would say, "Hell, I can't find any bad drivers." So at that time, we were only operating 8 trucks from a peak of 23. So that shows you how much the packing plants and feedlots and so on impacted the situation here in California. In 1999, a few years later, Superior Farms says, "Well, I don't know about Imperial Valley. I know that's their winter good hauling, bringing lambs to our slaughter plant up here, but don't depend on many loads this year. Things are changing." So that was another nail in the coffin. In the year 2000, we shut down the trucking operation and it would continue repairing other people's trucks for 8 years. So the most difficult decision I had to make, to pull the pin. My mom said, "1 more year." She was my comptroller at the time, 85 years old. She'd write out the monthly statements, profit and loss. She liked to do that. Plus, she liked to do collections. She was good at it. She talked real nice and could get it done. I couldn't do that and get it. So I could talk about the dispatch book, maybe. Our telephone system, how it worked. we had two dispatchers in the peak. There were telephones in my parents' house and telephone in the office. So we had 4 sets of 6-button phones, so to speak, all interconnected, and whoever was on duty at that time would operate those set of phones, some at their home, sometimes at the office. There was not a time, 24 hours a day, you couldn't call the Valley Livestock number and talk to someone. The trucks were running day and night, early in the morning. They had to have instructions. They had a situation where you solved problems. So things were really, really quite active. I remember my sister complaining, gee whiz, my dad's got a telephone in the bathroom next to the toilet. I'm afraid to take my friends home and show them. Let's see here. This dispatch book. Hold this up. There was a lot of coding that went in on here. The loads were written in as they were taken off the telephone, and then the truck numbers are all across the top on how many trucks are available. So you got a moment to know as you're talking to somebody, you knew if you had enough trucks to satisfy the load for that day. Certain customers you didn't say no to. Other ones you hope you could push it over 2-3 days this way, that way. And then once the load was processed, there was a mark off where it was billed, and then another mark off. Actual monies were received. We call this the Bible. When you're on duty, you were tacking this all the way with a telephone. Never got away from a telephone. This thing. So it was shared. At least didn't have to do it continuously. Shared between dispatchers and whoever was on duty. My mom could be on duty too, and everybody was out. She could run the office and dispatch too. Bless her heart. Let's see. Getting towards the end. Are you getting bored? I'll open it up for a. I want to give credit to my family. Got 2 sons. My son Paul, he worked as a young man in our business for a while till he got a job, and then also my son David ended up in a computer programmer in Stockholm, but he was pretty good at making drawings. He put this isometric drawing of the trucks up there. It shows where the loading compartments inside and so on. He did help us with our computer situations also while he was in high school. And also have 2 grandsons back here. Introduce them, Paul. Blake, go on, get up. Brennan, stand up. Yeah. We're gonna be one's looking at going to UC Davis, the other one's automatically signed up for UC Berkeley. So. And they're both water polo advocates. So I'll open it up for questions.
What happened to the DeLorean?
Okay, good story. The DeLorean. This was down in Imperial Valley, probably El Centro, loading chute for the broadbent people. And you can see the loading chute here, what goes up and down three levels. The DeLorean belonged to Jack Taylor, but I think it was a rental car. He was having lots of fun with that thing at the time. So, anything else?
When did the CHP and having to keep track, did that go all the way back? I know that truckers have to, how many hours they...
The logging hours, yeah.
Did you used to have to stop on the highway back then?
Right. You have to try and figure out so you don't have to stop. But that's why you had sleeper teams, okay? Or you could sleep on a load. Customers didn't like that on long distance. If you sleep on a load, you can drive for 8 hours, and then you have to drive for 10 hours and stop and sleep for an 8-hour period. Or if you have a sleeper berth, you can break it up and do 4 and 4 or 2 and 6, for example. And probably the hours of service became active, I'm guessing, in the 50s. started to develop the hours of service rules and enforce them. So, anything else?
So you went to Imperial Valley, pretty much, what, the Arizona, Nevada, or farther?
Farther, Wyoming, Utah, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, 11 western states. Yeah. But like the lambs are, these slaughter plants need a supply of product year round, and lamb becomes available different parts of the country depending on when they're born. It's California spring lamb. They're all born in late fall, and then they're ready to go in spring. If you go up in Oregon, it happens a little bit later, and you go up to Idaho, it happens a little bit later yet, and Wyoming, Utah's, and then some of them don't get fed. They're set down in Imperial Valley, and they're fed on clover or alfalfa down there, and then end up back in Dixon. So the plants have a supply, pretty much a good supply year round, and our trucking was probably really busy 10 months out of the year. July was slow. We used to say, oh, everybody's home eating hot dogs. That's why we're slow. And then in January, it was another slow period.
There's always at least one load every year on Christmas.
And that's right. It seemed like that never ended. Always would occur. Someone would have to ship on Christmas Day. It was fortunate to catch that many trucks at home, Christmas or Thanksgiving. So, anything else? Yeah.
Where were the trucks, where were the trailers built? Weren't they built in Seattle?
Yeah, well, the Kenworth trucks were built in Seattle. The first. Then there were some local body builders. I'm going back to my dad's days here, probably in Sacramento. Might have built this rack. They called it this time, and then utility trailer are the ones that built the first baskets, and then my dad wanted a floor to go up and down automatically. Double deck floor, go down to floor level and then back up at the double deck level on hydraulic rams or something like that. And they refused to do it, so he went to Reliance Trailer in San Francisco, and they produced that type of trailer. Then he wanted Reliance to knock more rate out of him. He said, "Yeah, you got it too heavy here and too heavy there," and they were a little conservative, didn't want the trailers breaking. So he got wind of Merritt Trailer Company in Portland, Oregon. They're the other ones that, in fact, built this wooden body, and decided to make a round hole, punched hole design. And that was their actually design and patent round holes. And they started to become the West Coast deliverer of livestock. Bodies and trailers were by Wilson Trailer Company, was a Midwest supplier. And we were always a little I would say, more successful. We had lighter rigs out here in the West Coast, kind of had to teach them how to do it back there. Of course, we had weigh scales all over the place. You got to pass over. So tare weight, light weights were important. Yeah, go ahead.
When John and I went to Switzerland and visited Marcel, did they have the same sort of operation? Okay.
Livestock operation? In Switzerland, no. It's a lot different. That's a whole different, it's not a beef industry, it's dairy and hog. So we got dairy cows and hog type. But what's that?
I had the impression on the bottom level of their house that they had some sort of dairy thing.
Oh yeah, right. Underneath a lot of the Swiss in those days lived up aboard, and their cows were down below for protection in the winter. So anyway, those trucks back then, the roads are small. All the trucks in Switzerland are a lot smaller than what you see in Germany because the Alps and winding around this way and that way. So their livestock trucks were smaller, and they did have double decking on them. They had a little elevator inside and raise them up and move them over. Whereas here we always had loading chutes. We had internal ramps and compartments, but we had an outside loading chute to get access to the truck. So any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
How did your when you were hauling molasses, did that work out pretty good for you when you were hauling it?
Oh, molasses, well, that was a two-way haul situation. We actually had a terminal in Lovelock, Nevada, bunkhouse there, places for the guys to sleep. It was actually a cattle and sheep feedlot. So all the cattle there went to like Solano Meat Company or Armour, and they needed molasses to mix with the feed up there. So all the cattle trucks are running up empty, hauling product down. Figure, well, gee, can you put somehow you can make a way to haul, liquid up. So we built a couple of trucks with toothpaste type tanks inside, haul the molasses up, empty out, get a night's rest, and bring cattle back the next day. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
I'm curious, after you made the decision to change your direction of life and take over the business, how in the world did you find the time to do your hobby? And we all know what your hobby is. I mean, I can't imagine running a corporation with that many people and being able to go race on the weekend.
Well, it wasn't easy, but I borrowed time to do it a little bit of time. I didn't go long distances. I didn't boat race on a long distance. When we went to the Depew or up to Seattle or something, that was a big deal because it took too much time out running the business. And bless my heart, my mom was home probably handling things. Bless her heart, I mean. Yeah, another one, Bobby.
In the summers when you used to take cattle up into the mountains, how many cattle would you have up in there usually?
Well, let's talk about, you could take 50 cows, mature cows, in one load. Or if they had calves on their side, we'd probably take like 33 pair. They would be separated into different, the calves would run in different compartments so they didn't get passed around.
Were those mostly local people who were raising them, or people from all around?
Oh, those type of movements were mostly local people, yes. Mm-hmm. Any more? Well, anybody got any stories you can tell that is connected? There's a lot of trucking stories. If you get the right people involved, we go on and on and on. But different situations make for a lot of laughs. So, yes, go ahead. Yeah, Bill.
Folks, about the Dixon Dandies.
Oh, what about the Dixon Dandies?
Yeah, how'd they get their name?
Oh boy, blame that on James Scott. We were kind of got into boat racing in high school. Jan Buellert came to me when I was probably a freshman. He says, "Hey, you wanna build a boat?" I was, "What? What do you mean, want a boat?" "Yeah, you can build. I got plans for the boat here from E.G. and McRae Company in Canada, and I can build a hydro. You can steal your dad's fishing motor when he's tired of it, and we go up in the sloughs having a lot of fun." One thing though, if we're going to do this, we got to decide to go to a real race one of these days. These were supposed to be real race boats. So we went to, eventually having lots of fun over the years, 2 years or so when we were a senior, we went to a real race, and that was a calamity. We didn't know what we were doing, but we did race and found out, wow, we really like this. And they called me the kid with the fishing boat, and I think they started calling us the Dixon Dandies too, because we didn't know what we were doing. But the times changed over the years. We kind of showed them the way to go. Go ahead.
Back in the day, in the trucking day, before you had the GPSs and the tracking devices.
Back in the day, trucking, can I say it again?
Before GPS systems,
Before GPS, yes.
tracking systems and this sort of thing, did you have any slick tricks to be able to determine if drivers were running the correct speed or covering the...
Yeah, very definitely. We had systems in place. We had a a speed recording device in the truck, and they were actually paid off of that device. It showed their downtime, and they have to mark in what they were doing, load, unload, drive, safety check, and so on. So then, let's see what I was going to say. Keeping track of the drivers. That was important too. And also the shippers wanted information. When they were loaded, generally they weighed somewhere. So after they weighed, they'd call in the numbers they had on board and how much they weighed. And we'd log it in on a sheet. And that evening, they had when they unload, they have to call in again and log it in. If they haven't reached their destination, they had to call in that evening, and if still hadn't reached their destination, they had to call again the next morning. So we're continually keeping track of them at a very large telephone bill.
Have you ever used one of those crazy things where you come down the mountain and there's a lane that goes off to the side?
Escape ramp, real good. There's a lot of stories behind that. We had, after we couldn't find good drivers, one driver ended up halfway in that escape ramp. I'm surprised he didn't turn the thing over because he was halfway in it. These typical trucks coming down 40, Don or someone has 40 miles of downhill. And it's real important that you conserve your momentum. In other words, take advantage of coasting and just, tooling along and not coming up the highway speed because you're going to go down again. When you go down again, you apply your brakes and you hold your control and control your speed. And temperature starts building up in the brake drums. You have 8 big heat sinks. And then after you're down to the bottom, you can float around on the flat and you keep your speed down on that flat and let the heat get out of those brake drums because you're going to go back down again. If you don't do that properly, you're going to end up and have to be going those escape ramps. The other thing is, if you have to make one emergency stop, jam on the brakes all the way, you're done. You better let them cool because there's not a second stop available. A lot of energy, 80,000 pounds, bring that to a stop. You're putting a lot of heat into the brake drums. So besides that, we had jake brakes or engine retarders would help improve the situation. But you could tell the guys that ended up in those escape ramps were generally from back east. They get halfway down, they'll think you're out of the hill and just let it go. And now the brakes are hot and they got to slow down, and pretty soon the brakes are on fire and you got nothing. That's a pretty scary feeling. My dad would talk about stories like that when he was a young man. That was back when the trucks like this, and probably a little older than that, he says they only had brake lining about 2 inches wide. Today's brake lining is like 8 inches wide. And so we're supposed to go down the hill in the speed that you went up the hill. Don't use the service brakes. You crawl up the hill when you had 150 horsepower. And it gets so hot inside a lot of times the driver to crawl out and pull a hand throttle out, crawl out on the fender there, running board, and hook his hand through the wheel and enjoy the scenery as you crawl up the hill. That's really getting back. It's going back to the 30s probably, I would say. Go ahead, Binky.
Trucks that your drivers wrecked.
At one time.
That was another reason I pulled the pin not to do it again. The last wreck we had, towards the end, we started rebuilding trucks instead of buying new. We actually bought 3 cabs from Freightliner at once, all brand new, painted, ready to go, and dropped them on our old aluminum frame systems because Freightliner was bought out by the Germans and they wouldn't give us aluminum frames anymore. So we put new drivetrains on, new cabs. It was like a brand new truck, but held our own specs. So, what'd you say, Binky?
How many trucks your drivers
Yeah. Well, anyway, after we got this one all fixed up, it was going to get good fuel mileage and the best of everything. And the normal driver assigned to that truck was on vacation or sick that day, and so we put an extra driver on there. Oh, he's coming along. He's pretty good. He could handle this local move. He got over there between Winters and Cape A and turned it over on the side, and he said, "Oh, dog ran out in front of me, so I moved over." And said, "Oh boy," that was kind of helped me decide what to do after previous soul searching. And how many? I don't like to tell you how many, but there are many over the years. You take 60 years of business, there's a lot of 2 o'clock in the morning, highway patrol cars, stuff happens. 2 point some million miles a year, things happen. But most of it happens between where the point of loading and the weigh scale. That's where the roads are treacherous. The county roads aren't marked for turns. When you drive on a livestock truck, everything is fine until you go around the turn a little too fast, and then they shift. and then it's kind of like all over with. So you got to really keep that in mind when you're loaded. Anything else?
When did your dad come over from Switzerland?
He was 17 years old, 1927. 1927. About the same time as your dad, Herm? Yeah. Bless their hearts, huh?
I got something to say about Father Walter.
Yeah?
I used to go to some of the boat races, and in fact, I was down in Santa Barbara one time, drove all the way down there, and at the end of the race, you know, I think Rich won or whatever, but anyway, Walter would always want us to go out to dinner afterwards, and he bought everybody's meals. Now, he figured if you go to his son's races, and my brother-in-law, Jan Bulick, was there also, but anyway, if you go to Rich's races, you were his buddy, and he was going to buy you dinner.
And it existed would be a Basque dinner too. Right, love to go to Basque. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Your father in Switzerland, your father's family, were they into the dairy business in Switzerland?
Not really, no. They were a relatively poor family. My father was the youngest of four brothers and three brothers and four sisters. In fact, and they were into dairy in a different way. They went to Germany to operate a dairy for someone. And so my dad actually was born in Germany. And the story is they had a wheelbarrow of money they took home with them. And when they got ready to cash it in, it was worth nothing, a German mark. So that was the effect of the World War. Yeah, here we go, Jess Jerome.
Yes, I want to tell a memory we had. You used to get a bunch of us high school kids to go up and we stayed at Donner Lake, and every morning we met at 4 a.m. For breakfast in Truckee, and then went out and loaded sheep that were coming out of the Sierras.
Exactly, those were the days.
Yeah, and then they always, the vast sheep herders, they had a big party. They killed the sheep, they cooked beans and baked bread, and they had red wine. This is pretty good for a high school kid. And then one day we took the sheep to a railhead, and I was shoving the sheep up in the car, and they closed the door behind me. And they said, "We can't open it till you get to Chicago." But that was a good memory there.
Let me add on to that. I remember it might have been the same shipment, but anyway, the train was waiting to haul long distance sheep, and the trucks were taking this is up in Sierra Valley area, probably north of there. Trucks bring down local, and the train was sitting there. This big old steamer, was sitting there waiting. I'm looking up there, and wow, I want to go up there and talk to that engineer. Sneak up there and see what's going on inside that engine. I got up and he was showing me all how it worked and this and that. And it says, "You want to ride?" He says, I'll take you to Reno, and your folks can meet me in Reno." Man, I'm all ready to do that. I was about probably your age, about 10 years old or something. And my dad got wind of that. "No, you're not going." I was really disappointed. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say I'm so in awe of your memory, and I really appreciate that you shared with us all. I know I'm probably speaking for most, but this has been wonderful.
Well, I'm not good at speaking off the cuff. I had to do a little research and scrape my memory and dig out from here and there. But as you sleep and think and do, it starts coming back piece by piece.
You're speaking better than our president.
There we go. They were the same age. I have trouble recalling words too. Okay, I guess that's about it then.